So, welcome for whoever is here or will be watching the recording later. This is very much a recording that will be locked down to the BMO community. You want up? Um, and members. So I'll leave it up for a few hours in Substack, but it is incredibly private material and very much based on BMO. So I promised that I would get into some of my original journals, and the moment where the funk method and the BMO practice was really taking shape. And so I've spent the last hour or more reading through what I knew was an incredibly difficult part of my life. But to be honest, until this last hour, I had how difficult. Um, but from that difficulty, from that just, I hate to call it desperation, but from that really low place, that's why the BMO practice was born. So at this point, I'm years and thousands of hours into research. I've been journaling. I'm probably about at least 20 journals into this experience, this trying to do it differently. I started with the beginning of all that started with CBT. I started with DBT. I personally like DBT more than the CBT, so that's dialectical behavior therapy. I started with all of those things. I started with a ton of workbooks, and I was just reading, studying. And as you know, you can't keep life from happening. Don't you wish you could sometimes? So essentially, for a very long time, I stuck to some of those like behavior therapy practices. So even here in this spread of only 1 month, maybe 4 to 6 weeks, I'm still doing, it's a hot mess, but I'm still doing like the reframing, right? I'm still rewriting it in very various ways. So sometimes I'm doing affirmations as a rewrite. In this case, I'm doing worries, and then I'm doing self-compassion, and then what I care about. So I was like starting to at least reinvent the CBT, but I was still doing the CBT. I was just giving it different names essentially. Like it very much was not working though. What was working about it is that it was igniting a ton of emotion. And thankfully, I'm someone that is really good at sitting with emotion. If you have that disorganized behavior, that fearful avoidant, that really volatile upbringing, then you probably also are very good at the darkness. You're very good at the bad, right? So I was very good with emotions, which is why I was able to tap into really awful places using this. At this point, well into, I mean, roughly 18 months of doing this every single day for hours a day. So what was happening is that I was digging up a lot of shit. Like, I'm going to be French about it. I was digging up some serious shit. But I had nowhere to go with it. I didn't have the what now. I didn't have the what's next, and I didn't know how to process it. So, when you hear me talking about the FEMA practice and you hear me talking about things like the importance of the order, and when you start with what you know, it isn't actually what you know. When you come into it with knowing power, when you come into it with this is what this is all about, you're actually shutting down what you don't want to discover. So I was very, a lot of this advice, a lot of what I say comes from this experience. It comes from unraveling this and rebuilding this. So I You could say that I completely dug to the bottom of all of it and then figured out how to fill it in better. You could say that I unraveled an entire, thread, a yarn, and then figured out how to make a cardigan. This is how I built the Bima practice. But again, never built it to be a product because I think that actually would have ruined it. I never had the intent of like, what can I build to sell? Because I think that's half the problem with everything that is out there. Like, seriously, give me a hallelujah if you understand that. Like the problem with so many things out there is that they just want to make it cute. They just want to make it fun. They just want to make it something that you're going to spend some money on, but they're not actually concerned with getting you places or teaching you things or holding you because that doesn't sell in their mind. What sells is the cute split second moment of like, oh, this has butterflies in it and I'm supposed to draw them in with affirmations, and you know what I mean, like these kind of regurgitated materials, whether they're more academic or they're more cutesy, it just doesn't hold you. And I was talking about this with someone just this morning who brought me a very famous person's workbook that recently was released, and she just said to me, I hate it. Like, she doesn't even want to start it because she is familiar with the Bima practice and she understands that it's not going to hold space for her and it's not about her. Like, none of it pertains to her life. And what she loves about BMO is that it's deep enough to hold you and high level enough to be about you, no matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter where you're coming from. So, to go back to this like 6 week period of time, I am, from reading this, I am reminded that, first of all, this is about April and May of 2021. For those of you who are familiar with the book that I've written and I'm in the middle of editing, this is in the meat of rising action, meat of the moment. So um we had been renovating our house. We are already back home being the city our house is in, not the home that we live in, because as you can see here, I've been counting the days. Our 3 month renovation is now day number 254, and we're home, but we have no home. And I am reminded through this, we're still living in a hotel. We've been gone for over 6 months. Things still aren't done, but not only are they not done, like, they're very much not done. Like, it's like walls are up, floors are in, and that's about it. So in these pages, we're making decisions on cabinets, what they should be, what they should look like, or making decisions on blinds and things like that. And part of what I'm going through is that I'm like, I made these decisions months ago, in some cases just weeks ago. Nobody's hearing me, nobody's doing it, and I'm feeling like very triggered, unseen, unheard, unknown, staying in a hotel, spending extra money in that whole hotel that I is a big trigger for me. It feels like a waste. Waste is a huge childhood trigger for me. I feel in trouble for wasting. So I'm triggered all over this place by this. I'm like, if they would have heard me, which I know they did because I watched them write it down weeks ago or months ago, then I wouldn't be extending this hotel night after night after night. It got so ridiculous with the extensions of the hotel that we actually forgot to extend it once. That's just also in these pages. And it had been like 3 days past our checkout time, and the front desk was like, are you leaving? And we're like, oh, sorry. Extend it again. So that is happening, as if a renovation isn't enough. There's a unbelievable amount of stress because in this period of our life, I had chosen to be the breadwinner. I had chosen to allow my partner to retire, to figure out what it was that he wanted to do in the second era of his life. Um, but in these pages, I had quit my job 3 months earlier. So I'm very stressed because there's an obligation. I feel there's a lot of belief systems at play that I don't see. I mean, I see them, but I don't know how to process them, right? So I see a lot, I just don't know what to do with it. So I see that I'm feeling ridiculously responsible and I'm just draining my savings account to fulfill a promise. Um, and just giving everything away all the time. So I'm feeling that. On top of that, I am I have been on a infertility and hormonal journey uh, for several months at this point. But at this point, we actually have doctors, and they put me on progesterone, and it's very much not safe for me. It's very much not working. So in these pages, I am also stressed about not being able to be a mother and what that means for our relationship. And I'm suicidal because of the hormonal replacement therapy that they're putting me through. And my body is just like, no. And I'm scared because my mom died from progesterone hormone replacement therapy. So I'm terrified. Not, went down? I'm also not sleeping, not just because we're, in a hotel and none of that is really working. So, there we go. Um, oh no, I lost my page, sweet boy. Uh, I'm not, I'm still medicated for sleep. I'm trying very hard because of the fertility journey to get off of what at this point is about 17 years of really hard medications for all of the issues that I had had with an autoimmune disease that has to do with sleep. But the only way out is through. So I have so much fear around sleep that getting off medications is actually causing me to overdo them out of fear. So I try to titrate down from medications. I get so afraid of not being able to sleep through the night, not being able to get enough rest, that then I end up doubling down. Like I take the medicine and then I'm like all screwed up because it's mixing with progesterone, it's mixing with all the stress, and I'm just so uptight. But also just to add to it, this is also the classic era in which I am so much is just eking out of me. Like so much is going from unconscious to subconscious, and subconscious is like bumping up against that conscious. That I was actually surprised to find that one of the most revealing parts of my entire practice that I revealed many months after this in September of that year, I actually wrote it word for word right here, straight out, and still couldn't see it, if that makes sense. So, like, I wrote all about it. I wrote all about the really awful things that I felt were true, that seemed to make sense to me. But I guess it was more speculatory still, even though it was puzzles that were fitting together. Um, but I wasn't ready to accept it. And part of that is because I'm still just going through standard practices. I haven't quite created the funk method yet. Those are the things that helped me build self-trust, emotional regulation, safety, security, the things that allowed me to actually see what I had to see. And rather than repress or regress, I was able to hold it with strength and security and move through it. But we're not there yet. So if you're ever somebody who you have a lot of awareness, you know a lot of things that have happened to you, you've been through all that stuff, and the cutesy stuff out there is just clearly not changing you. It just makes you feel bad. No, it makes you feel good in a sort of instant gratification sense. Then you might be in a very similar place to how I felt. So I'm really going through it Um, because all of this is coming up for me in my life, and I am writing at this point, I mean, probably 20 plus pages per night, every single night. Like there's some pretty, you can even see where my pens run out of ink and my hand starts to cramp, like you can visually see it. So I'm writing through it. I'm trying to learn with so much vulnerability, and I'm trying to build security, and I'm trying to be honest. So I'm sharing so much of it in therapy. My partner's going to therapy with me. He's hearing this. I'm sharing it very much, when we're on hikes, when we're together. I'm sharing what I'm going through. I'm not really, at this point, I don't have the information to understand how it manifests for him. I'm just starting to get really deep into my era of attachment theory, and that really makes a huge difference. That is where things start to pivot. So I don't understand why he's so exhausted by me. All I know is that, like, I share it, it exhausts him, it must be me, therefore I'm mad at him, and we're just having this, like, cycle, and he's just getting more and more and more worn down by how serious and heavy my life is, and I don't understand the difference between us. Like, I've been carrying this serious and heavy my whole life. What's your problem? Um, so we're really igniting each other, and the only way I know how to deal with it still is with self-blame. So I double down on all the things I've tried. I go back to try them again, but I'm also spewing them like fire. Like I'm saying to him, like, I have tried all these things. I have tried these therapies. I have tried to be okay with what you want and what's safe for you and what your desires are. I've tried, like, you know what I mean? But he's very much also on the page of like, I've tried. And there, it's interesting. It's almost every single day. Like one day, I love him. I'm so grateful for him. I can't believe him. Like, lucky. The next day, I'm writing about our history to a point of just upsetting myself. I'm reminding myself of, friendships, relationships, other girls. And I mean, not even like cheating or anything like that, but just like people who are involved, decisions that are made, times that we had separated. And I'm just going through it, and I'm like convincing myself almost to just freaking hate everything about my life. And then the next day, I'm like, "Ah, la-di-da-di-da, la-da-da-da-da." And it's because I'm going through this situation like every single day. I'm in a great place, and it's really interesting how I go through, like, making it my fault that anything is bad and convincing myself what is good. And I'm not all of, I mean, that's the language. What I'm saying is not necessarily wrong in these pages. Like, he hugs me every morning, he sets my bed every night, he brings me water, he fluffs my pillow. He is so aware of how I struggle with my sleep that he's making it as easy as possible. Like, these are still true to this day, and he's a wonderful and amazing person for it. So it's not that what I'm saying is wrong, but the language in which I'm using it is still very much like self-convincing. And so then the next day, knowing that I have this like belief system, this thing that I'm working against, then I explode. But the reason I'm exploding isn't because I'm mad at him. I'm exploding because I'm mad at how I'm seeing it, how the language I continue to have around it, this cycle that I'm in. And what used to be a cycle that maybe, went periodically over weeks or months is now cycling every single day. So I'm in this rapid growth. I have all this medication, all this lack of sleep, all of this house stuff, all this worry about money, all of this is coming up. And, probably because of all of the feelings and medications, but also because I've been working on this for 18 months, I'm starting to bring up serious stories of abuse, serious stories of neglect, serious, like, I have chosen not to read much of this out loud for fear of the trigger warnings would be, it would be like the when they do the really fast speaking on a medical commercial, or they're like, "Don't take this if," like, I feel like the trigger warnings would be like, like, it would just be like, "Don't listen to this if." And so, I'm happy to answer any questions and go there with anybody that wants to go there, because I am an open book. Um, but I'm just fighting. I'm trying so hard to do everything right. I'm talking to doctors. I'm changing, vitamins, the way that I eat, the way that I work out, the way that I sleep. I'm trying to change everything, but I'm also trying to do all of it with just a serious self blame. Like, it's all on me. It's all about me. That's it's kind of narcissistic in a way, but there's a big difference between narcissistic as a learned behavior and narcissistic as actually a clinical personality disorder. And um, I very much have that sense of, it's all my fault. It's all about me. Why are you doing this to me? Oh my gosh, I did that to you. Like this, and that's disorganized, right? It's like no matter what, that pendulum is just swinging. And so I'm going through it all. I'm not even sharing everything that I do discover with my partner, but he's so worn out by it that, the classic, that some of you know all about, the classic fight of like, I don't want to be with you anymore. You're like touching a hot stove. That is happening in this moment. Which I wasn't reminded of until I started digging through this. That, I mean, I remember that story extremely well. It was a huge turning point in my life, and it was very, very awful set of months in my life. Of course, it was very difficult when you agree, when you and your partner, after 10 years, are sitting on your therapist's couch together, and you agree that you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. And you agree that the only way to possibly save it is to do nothing at all, because at least then it'll die slowly rather than quickly. And so we're in this place where we're just like, we can't move. Like, don't move. The house of cards is shaking. But we both believe the house of cards is mine. I built it. It's my shit. It's my fault. I'm the one that's so shaky. So we're in this place, and the funk method, of course, is starting to be born in this place, because it is so extreme. It is so dire. It is so familiar in how dire it is. It's reminding me of, especially the era of being a teenager when my mom passed away, and being sent away over and over again. And there's no adult in my life that wants me, and nobody wants to take care of me. And I'm being sent over here and over here and over here. And it's uncomfortable and unsafe to be home. So I'm staying out all night. I'm having to skip school. I'm starting a career. I'm like 16 and 17 years old, trying to do it all. And just that like era, that decade of just dire, nothing you do will work. So it's like, to me, I've spent 10 years in my relationship, and it's at a dire point. I spent 10 years from the moment my mom died to the moment of finally just getting my feet under myself and just being like, I've got it. I can survive this. I can take care of myself. You know, in one story after my mom died, it's abuse, it's terrible relationships, it's homelessness for a long period of time, it's in and out of college, it's constantly being spoken to, yelled at, told, criticized, unhelped. And then in this other era, it doesn't feel any different. And so I'm feeling the depth of like, how did I end up here again when I did everything right? When I when I tried to have the kids, and I went, and I've had multiple careers, and I had X, Y, Z, A, B, C. I got the promotions, I got the new jobs, I got the money, I got the title, I got the company you want to work for. Like, I ticked all those boxes, but also I ticked the boxes of like world traveler and having lived in another country. Like all these things that I thought were accolades and meant something and could change me were just need toing myself, right? We talk a lot about that with female. Like I was just ticking boxes. It's the same, there's the whole victim, martyr, hero. It's essentially a very zoomed out version of that. Like you're either very much a victim or you're a martyr or you're a hero or something. And sometimes the most dangerous one is when you enter that hero phase, when so like a victim is somebody who, you believe that you can earn through struggle. Like if it's hard enough, bad enough, the grind is enough, then eventually somebody's going to save you. And you're earning that. And there's so many systems, just literal belief systems that reinforce this, especially in America. Like it's very much like the worse your life is, the harder you struggle, all of those things, then you will be saved. Martyr, very much like a blend of the two, but hero being like, I'm doing it all for myself. It's like the opposite side of earning, right? Rather than the struggle to earn, it's I ticked all the good person boxes and the education and career and womanhood boxes and expectations, and why the hell is it still not working? You're like, I did it all. I did it all right and it's still not working. So you kind of have this arc, but it's the same story. So I'm in this very dire place. It's very, very dark, and yet I do have a little bit more security than I've ever had before because of just the part of practicing sitting in the emotion for 18 months, sitting with the dark stories, sitting with the hate, sitting with the I can't believe it, sitting with the stories that were coming up repeatedly about my upbringing. Like most of these pages are really going through the past over and over and over again. The things that I didn't warrant or love about my relationship became the things that I didn't love about my life in general. My childhood, my relationship with siblings, my relationship with my parents. It's just rehashed over and over and over and over and over again. But I'm still very much acting out with it. We're still fighting. I'd like here day 254, right? I'm like, we're dealing with all the upcoming stressors, and I've thrown out the word done and happy fucking anniversary and I want a divorce in less than 12 hours. So I bring that up because a lot of those things weren't changing despite venting, journaling, CBT reframing. And at this point, almost 20 years of therapy with, there were several therapists in the beginning, and about 16 to 17 years with the same therapist. At this point, a wonderful therapist. And that, those even talk therapies, those traditional CBTs and DBTs were just, they got me so far. They got me into a lot of awareness. They got me to knowing how I should be. You know what I mean? Which just was igniting the shame and the blame of not getting there, and the self blame and the responsibility, like assigning responsibility to myself in order to control. Like it was, at this point, it was just exacerbating it. And, so I was going to therapy more frequently. I was writing more frequently. I was studying more frequently, and I was just like not breaking through. So, here I'm still doing CBT at the beginning of April. And then in this one, by the end of April, I started kind of creating my own, and I started doing it based on like you would with CBT, like every single belief, but I was doing it with feelings rather than beliefs. I wasn't really like figuring out the two. And so I would do the current version of funk over and over and over again. So I would do it like 3 to 5 times on a single day. So here I did 3 times. So I would say, like, I feel frustrated over the logistics and overall care going into the house right now, talking about the renovation. And I want you to really listen to like the self-talk going on here. Really good at just identifying a feeling and what the problem statement is. But when you mix the two, you're making your feeling the problem. So that's one thing. Next, instead of understanding, we're going into compassion. But listen to this. I immediately talk about the two people that are working on our house right now, have been working night and day, 7 days a week on projects. I bet they're burned out. I love that I have compassion for other people, but I'm completely skipping over myself. So I feel a frustration, and then I immediately go into self blame and shame. Like I shouldn't feel that way because they're working so hard. And then I go into care, which is what eventually became like the empowering choices in cans. So I used to call it cares. And I said I care about having a home that they are driven to complete because it is also a source of pride for them. So now I'm like so afraid to make it about me because I don't understand the difference between self-assigning blame and secure behaviors. Like it doesn't have to be anyone's blame. That I'm like, okay, the only way to not blame myself is to care that they. So now I'm like a martyr of it, right? So I don't care about myself. I only care that they get it done right. But I am trying so hard. And then I go into knowing, like I know our home will be so incredible when finished. And so at this point I'm setting myself for it'll be okay when, but not until then. So of course I still feel awful. Of course it's still very difficult. Then I'm actually starting to reveal can. So I'm doing cares and can. So I go into can. I can continue to show up to answer questions. I can make sure to be available without being bothersome. Like it's my fault, right? I can be more compassionate and encouraging. I can remember to ask the general contractor about his mom and do more to encourage them. So I'm like, you just need to be like, that's really coming across with like, if you were just nice kind of energy, right? So then I talk about like a class that I'm taking. That's the next one. Like I feel nervous about the class and I go through that. And then the next feeling is like feeling incapable, essentially, and it's all about work. So everything is about doing. It's all about doing behavior. So that is April 26th, 2021. And by the time we get to approximately a month later, not even that long. I think I just go to a month later because at that point we moved back into our house, even though it's not done yet. Like we don't even have toilets. It's technically illegal to move back into. By this point, I'm doing a lot of the things that I know how to do and that I enjoy doing. I've brought positives into it. I have imagined future, which is something that I had, created many years before and had been doing at random. And I'm talking about some really difficult things. Like we're here not for lack of trying, but the house is far from done and it smells. And I'm going on about, being upset that it's not clean. And then, like, we're living there for less than a week, and we had 2 leaks. So I'm talking about like have to take the wall down again, and it's leaking again, and all of this is going on. And then there's a point where my therapist says, he says he told me to let things be wrong with the house so that things can be right in my relationship because this is the end of May, and on April 5th of that year, we had that's when we had sat on that couch and agreed that it was over. So now every day I'm trying very differently with all this desperation. Now I have a long form compassion for others. And I'm working through it. I'm working so hard to create something that is going to at first feel better, like I did just like anyone else who is new to all of this. I was just trying to feel better. It was all about changing the feeling. Um, that kind of profound understanding of the feeling is not the problem didn't come until this era of research was done. I even at this point have like the five whys practice. So I would name a feeling and then I would go through five whys. So I have the elements of what would become the PMO practice kind of scattered all over, but I haven't yet put it into order. But by the end of this, I know that I want to, which is the next part of why it does actually come up about. Like it is working well enough that at this point I'm expressing to people how to do some of these steps. People are coming to me and noticing that I am changed in the sense that I am holding more space quietly. Yes, I'm reacting big. Yes, I'm reacting often, but my reactions are shorter. I'm It's easier for me to apologize. It's actually a good thing that it's coming up rather than exploding, after 6 weeks or something like that. So I'm exploding a lot, but exploding in like small amounts, like little pop-offs. And people are actually noticing that this is healthier and better for me, and so they're asking me what it is I'm doing. So I get to the point where I decide I do want to start teaching people this. So what is it that is working? So first is the total dire, the 10 years after my mom died, mirroring the 10 years of my relationship. My relationship, despite everything we have done, everything we have worked through, being in the middle of fertility, all of that is falling apart. Losing my mom as a teenager and trying to regain so much, I don't know, credit, safety, so many different things in the era after she died had the same level of darkness and dire. I have a lot of fears of how they're going to be the same, but I'm meeting it differently in this era. So in this dire phase, I'm starting to use all the tools I know, which is why you see compassion for others, you see imagine future, you see the CBT, you see the DBT, you see affirmations, you see the reframing, and I am just rapidly using my hypervigilance as a superpower at this point to just rapidly just figure out bing, 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 like what is working, like ADHD superpower too, to be honest. But so I'm just trying to figure out, does it work? No. Does it work? No. Does it work? No. Does it work? No. Because I am feeling the worst, most awful things I have ever felt in my life, and it is piling. And while I am doing okay, it is my world is starting to get really shaky. The house of cards is coming down and I want to be prepared for it. So I'm just analyzing what is holding space for all of it. And so I get to the point where funk becomes feelings, the you note caring and knowing, which only in hindsight, because you know, I would literally put you and then N, and that was the UN of funk. But in all honesty, it was just FUCK. Let's be honest, which is why I was still a little bit bleeped. I won't say that, I use a lot of French, but I won't offend everyone with that one. But I was just screwed, right? I was still not fully breaking through, but things were better. I appeared better to other people, but I was just on fire from within. So here at this point, I could say I feel discouraged when we have a fight every day. I feel shamed when the implication is that I should find something to do. I feel angry when what I do isn't recognized. I feel angry when met with criticism. And then I'm, using the you note, I'm actually figuring out, and this comes from my research, this comes from a lot of like PhD, doctors, like books, articles, all these things. I figure out how to quit having that self blame compassion of like shaming myself into what I should be considering, yes, compassion for others is great, but we can't just immediately go into that because that's self-blaming. Like there's an order to things. So I'm understanding order. I'm understanding naming and internalizing. So now I'm internalizing to the like you have finally arrived at the quiet, uncomfortable lack of stillness or distraction that is going to allow you to break through. Just keep going. Walk, hike, write, create, think, be still. You don't need to turn on any extra TV in the name of studying or make plans with people or distract with elaborate meals. Just be. Please sit with this. Spend time being gone. Find yourself there. So one thing I want to note here is that if something is incredibly confusing to you, because that a little bit of that was confusing to me, that's actually evidence psychologically and the lack of cohesion, an uncohesive story, or a story that is confusing, that jumps timelines, that goes here and there without explanation, is actually evidence of you are writing around trauma rather than through it. So if you find yourself just when you're venting, when you're using your BMO journal, and it is just no cohesion there, there's no linear thought. And that's why I call it flow. That's why I want people to just flow. I want you to chase. I want it to, if it's going to change, let it change. I don't want you to force linear behavior or linear thought whatsoever, because part of that releasing is required to create linear thought. So if you put it all on the page, all over the place, wherever it's coming from, for starters, you can recognize that it isn't linear. You can recognize that there's something there simply by getting lost in your own words and trying to figure out what the heck you're writing about, and like seeing yourself jump around. So you at that point that something is there, and to allow it to come forward again as often as it needs to come forward whenever it comes back up for you. So that's part of it. The other part of it is that when you're getting it all out on the page, when you're allowing that uncohesive thought, then you're actually, it's kind of entropic. It's like a mess it's a mess inside that allows you to tap into the shadow corners of your brain. So imagine throwing paint at a canvas and just throwing and throwing, and you're starting to choose different colors, and the different colors are different storylines. It's the different places that you're going in your mind, and as you choose those different colors, all of a sudden you start to see a picture rather than blobs, rather than thrown paint. So go with it. Allow for that lack of cohesion. I never reread. This is the first time that I'm like really going back, because first of all, it's been 5 years. Second of all, it is it, to reread as a self-analysis is to get stuck without going deeper. You want to allow yourself to repeat. If you reread, if you study your own words immediately afterwards, I mean, it's one thing to take it to therapy and work through it, but if you're constantly trying to like pick it apart too soon, immediately after, you want to see what's there rather than a high level scan of analyzing maybe how you've written it or maybe what you've talked about, then you're robbing yourself of those dark corners. You're robbing yourself of the part that you haven't written yet, because you're like doubling down. It's like almost making the text bold. You know what I mean? So when you don't reread, you're allowing yourself to forget that you wrote it at all. You're storing it in that unconscious space, and you're allowing it to come forth again and again until it has enough light for consciousness. And the light comes from two places. It comes from repeating it differently rather than repeating it as the trauma and neglect center of your life. So you're putting it in the process, going through the process, however you do that. The journal is one modality. The other part of adding light to dark corners is just building security. So the self-trust and the security and the secure behaviors comes from relying on the process, relying on the BMO practice as a way of processing your thoughts and your emotions in every day, not just the big stuff, not just the big re-nurturing past stuff, but actually, how am I going to spend my day? What is it that I need today? That's part of the reason why I created the notepad for like the morning, and the journal for the big moments, the evening, or the decision making, the conflicts and things like that, or for holding space for joy. Using that notepad every single day allows me to meet just the boring of the day, still using and processing with the BMO practice. So it can be a day filled with meetings, filled with decisions. It's tax season and gotta go to do all of that, but I am meeting it with my core need. I am understanding, I'm giving space and grace, I'm showing up for myself, right? That's what allows me to do that. So here I say, like, we stopped at and then I go into care. So I'm starting to put it in order, but it's still called care. I care to get through the other side so that who and how I am, what I do is forever an active choice. I care to be ready to do what I choose always, to set boundaries and to allow myself the freedom within my boundaries to be assertive. So when I decided to actually write the BMO practice and teach it, I moved cares into describing what your needs look like in the deeper advanced BMO re-nurturing practice. So I really had to go back and figure out what allowed me to process the day to day, so the core BMO practice, and then what was the deeper practice. So here at this point, the irony is I'm creating the core BMO practice in the middle of my re-nurturing practice. So I really had to parse it apart and figure out what was more advanced and kind of like reverse analyze it in order to produce it to teach other people. So cares, became cans. It became revealing empowered choices. And I end with knowing. I said, I know I love and support my partner. I know he's going through his own growth spurts and realizations. I know I can talk to my therapist whenever I need, and we'll see him on Monday. I know I will be okay no matter what. I know I have what I need to take care of myself. I know I can already make my own choices. I know I love my partner deeply. I know I want to share my life with him. I know I want our relationship to get much better. I know I want to be on the same team. Great knowing. The reason that knowing is in here is because it's one of those things that for, decades, my therapist would, at the end of a session, just be like, practice what you know, remember what you know. And I loved that. And at the time, I would be like, oh, yeah. But then I'd go home and with all my disorganized behavior, with all of that, like, volatility within myself, because that was volatility was my home. I was so used to volatility in my life that I had disorganized behavior. I had that fearful avoidance. So I would go home with that quiet, peaceful practice what you know. And by the time I got home, I would be like, what the hell do I know? You know what I mean? And when you're disorganized, landing only with what you know, actually, this is probably more than just disorganized, especially if you're anxious at anything. Like, to be told to, practice what you know in the heat of a moment, in a difficult situation, in a spiral, just came up for me as 1 minute, I knew I was doing my best. I knew I was safe. And 2 minutes later, I also would know I'm a terrible person, and I would know this is all my fault, and I would know that I am in trouble, and I would know I'm not going to sleep tonight, and I could not parse the two. And all of that would create a spiral, because you can't start there. You can't rely only on that. So the whole adage of practice what you know is very, very purposely at the end of the BMO practice, because it's arriving at what you know. It's getting there, regrounding in the reminder. It's getting there only after you've soothed through every step of that practice. And it mirrors the perfectly. So you have that self understanding, and then you get to requalify it essentially. So it's doubling down in two different ways, in two different modes. So here as I'm creating this first version of the funk method, I also at this point have chosen to start ending my practice with positives. So this is where the positives is coming in, and this is also where some of the BMO extras have come in. So through this 6 week period of time, or the sky is falling, like there's so much going on in my life, I am parsing out what is working. So here I choose to end with positive lists and compassion for others. What I have dropped over these 6 weeks is the CBT and DBT reframing. I have dropped affirmations because, similar to knowing, affirmations can, and this is an unpopular opinion, affirmations are actually quite dangerous for a lot of people. It's not step one, it's not something that you can just immediately convince yourself of, because it's igniting old criticism, old shame and blame patterns when you just simply say, I am something that you don't believe. So, affirmations on their own don't work for a lot of people and can double down on trauma and can work very backwards and can be very igniting and can be very triggering. But especially if you have the mindset reset workbook that is there on the BMO Journal website, that one is very specific to breaking down limiting beliefs into steps. Affirmations is a step in this process. It is not the beginning, nor is it the end. And it'll really help you believe what you are trying to say to yourself. So I talk all about that. And I taught a workshop on that about a year ago. And we'll probably do a workshop on that again this year. Maybe I'll work it into the retreat that we're having. We have an online retreat on April 11th and 12th. If you would like to come, those tickets are on the website as well. So yeah, I dropped CBT, I dropped DBT, I dropped affirmations. Some of the um, other things I dropped was I used to do this daily recap. I used to call it my to done list instead of my to do list. And it felt great at the time to be recognizing all that I was doing, but it was just promoting doing behavior and further burnout. Uh, there's very there's a lot of different versions of dialectical behavior and cognitive behavior therapy in here that I just gave up on. I kept gratitude. I kept compassion for others. I kept imagine future. I kept five whys. Those were the first set of BMO extras. I have since created even more based on practice, based on research, based on discussions with therapists and things that are generally needed. And then this funk method really became something different once I got fully through this almost final era of my 10,000 hours of research and 34 journals filled. It kind of ended with really studying attachment theory and studying how attachment theory in those first 18 to 24 months of life mirror the first 18 to 24 months of romantic relationships and the closest relationships you have. So how a mother's attachment with a brand new child, it creates that generational trauma even when you're doing the best. I got really deep into parenting books, even though I was part of it was this fertility journey, but the majority of it was that I was actually reading them with myself, my inner child in mind, rather than this future child that we were trying to create. And that was a big part of these final things that I was going through and digging deep on. And I really, really, really spent a ton of hours on attachment and reparenting and parenting. And I went really deep into needs discovery towards the end of this research as well. I went, you know, all the way to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but not the ones that we all see the triangle, not just the things that have been regurgitated, but actually reading his articles, his journals, his studies, and some of that is so boring. You know what I mean? Because they're just these academic papers. But I just parsed through all of it, and I followed the thread from what he did to what the next person did to what the next person did. And in that, I really discovered that, cognitive behavior therapy is from the 60s, 70s, 80s, a little bit. Dialectical behavior therapy is from late 80s, early 90s. Shadow work is also from the 60s, 70s, 80s. Parts work comes from that same 80s and 90s. And nobody, what they were modernizing therapy by putting it in an app or putting it in a workbook, but they weren't actually modernizing therapy by changing therapy. For today's highly triggering world where everything is coming at us at 1,000 miles per hour. We have phones that are beeping, we have more traffic, we have advertising, we have television, we have more people on the streets. We have so many things that are just coming at us. And we have emotions about all of them. And emotions, so often we have been taught, are triggers, and very, very few people are being raised in secure, voicing needs, safe spaces because of the amount of triggers happening in life. So that's at the core of all of this, and the darkest part of this new era, trying to start my life, trying to save my life, trying to save my relationship, and trying to start a family, is when I felt like I had run out of time and I needed to reinvent the wheel. And that is exactly what I did. I took everything that did and didn't work, from 10,000 hours of research, from years of study, from so much. And in this darkest moment, I built something to hold me. And that's what became the BMO practice. And that's what became the FUNCK method. So this is me for the last hour sharing the transition of that journey and what was happening at the time. The next time that I do a read from my original BMO journals, I will find the moment in which that reparenting, needs discovery, and the study of all of that came into what would become the final practice. And I will show you in these 3 sessions how, before the BMO practice was just so unhelpful in this dark time. It was just so nothing is working, rapid fire hypervigilance, but I'm starting to find it work. And then the next time I will show you that once I have the FUNK method as I teach it today, as is in the BMO practice, as is in the front of the BMO journal, like the same practice that you know and love, I will show you that arc of how I'm almost a completely different person straight out of the gate. And then I'll do a fourth share of showing you, 1 year after using the funk method that you use, and just showing that exponential growth, the way that I took off, the way that all of it just, I mean, it changed who I am. And it's very hard, of course, like so many people, you don't know me or hear me or meet me until I'm already through it. So for me to express who and how I used to be, it's a difficult thing to share, but in all honesty, like, yeah, I had a lifetime of just can't get through it levels of difficulty. And who and how I am now is not even close to the same person. The capability, the voice, the stillness, security, it's all there. And I hope to guide you through that along your own path as well. So thank you for joining me today. Thank you for being here for this hour. Let me know if there's anything specific that you want to know about my next session from reading from my BMO journal. That'll be about 3 to 4 weeks from now. But I will see you next Wednesday for another Journal with Me session right here on Substack for free. And if you would like to join our online retreat, that's April 11th and 12th. There's going to be using the funk method to write poetry. There's going to be somatic work. It's going to be this lovely 8 hours, 4 sessions across 2 days, in which we're really just capturing the season of blooming, the spring, the regrowth, the planting seeds. We're going to be doing all of that. It's not going to be heavy on the past work or the inner child work unless you need that. We will always, whatever you need, I will help guide you. It does include a one on one session with me as well. So I hope to see you at that retreat. And until then, I'll see you here next week. Thanks.